Why do people in big cities tend to be overwhelmingly liberal? The way my political science professor answered this question when I asked it many years ago was, in the countryside, you have the right to swing a baseball bat around so long as you don't actually hit anyone. That's your God-given right. In the city where there are a lot more people who you need to coexist with, you want the freedom to not get struck by some maniac swinging a baseball bat around. It's a difference in how these regions interact with government services and society in general. People living in cities are used to problems being solved collectively. Your garbage is collected by the city. You walk to the subway station on a city sidewalk. Take the city-run subway system to work every day alongside a million other people, etc. I mean, even the housing is done more communally with apartments instead of large individual homes. In a rural area, it's very different. The government doesn't have anywhere as much of a presence in your life. Public services in rural areas amount to a maybe paved road and the promise that if you call for help, they'll send the fire department within an hour. Problems within the community are solved on an individual level. Don't own a car and need to find a way to work? I hope your neighbor can drive you or else you're walking. And there won't even be a public sidewalk for you to use. This extends to politics. Rural areas tend to prefer policies that favor individualism. There's also the fact that cities are less homogeneous, which means you are exposed to a greater variety of people from a greater variety of backgrounds, which encourages inclusion and tolerance. This is just a guess, and not based on any facts. But I live in the city. Every day I see things that are great. But I also see a lot of problems. I see people from all over the world. The rich, the poor. I see their struggles. I see the results of our laws, our social service, our government. I used to live in a small village, and I never saw any of these things. It changed my way of thinking. It made me more open-minded and social. And I think that a lot of people in the city share this. Rural people tend to think they're totally independent, that you earn everything you get, etc. When you live in relative isolation, it's hard to see the whole world as interconnected. Urban people, because they encounter different people with different lives every day, are more likely to realize we are all in this together. Cities often have universities, and many people in post-secondary education are more left-wing. There's just a difference in how life is lived. In a huge city, you interact with more people, and also a more diverse group of people, in your day-to-day, and as a result are more likely to be aware of the plights that plague certain groups of people. If you live in a rural community, you won't interact with as many, nor as many types of people, and so the only plights you're aware of are the ones immediately surrounding you. A few reasons. 1. It's hard to get people angry about whatever outgroup when they live around so many different types of people. To a New Yorker, immigrants are just normal people going about their lives. Trans people are just normal people going about their lives. See a furry? Not even the weirdest thing you've seen today. They're fine. Just mind your own business. When you're around so many people, you just see them as people. So it's hard for you to care about culture war nonsense. 2. In a dense city, it's hard to maintain an illusion of self-reliance. With that many people around, you recognize the need for government regulation. You want government regulation. One person burning a tire with no one around for 5 miles isn't a big deal. 20 people on a block do that, and the air is thick with fumes. There are other reasons, but those are 2 big ones. Liberalism is also associated with better college education, and urban centers tend to be hubs for white-collar, knowledge jobs. Proximity to people who are different makes it easier to empathize with them, understand their differences, humanize them. etc. When you work with a Mexican immigrant, have a neighbor who is gay, etc., then it's less likely to see them as a monolithic group threat to you and your way of life, but individuals with different experiences. Urban living in more communal, collaborative by nature apartment and condo buildings. Mass transit, shared parks and recreational spaces, etc., all require collective behaviors to provide for everybody's enjoyment and safety. And it's both a push and pull effect. People with the above ideals will be more likely to gravitate to big cities in the first place. While being in a big city will also open people's eyes and cause them to shift liberal. Lots of great responses. I just want to chime in that the dichotomy is self-exacerbating. Liberals congregate and conservatives spread out. Liberals in the country move to the city, and vice versa. You're asking the wrong question, implying that right-wing politics is the norm. Instead, ask why do people in rural areas tend to be overwhelmingly right-wing? Education and more exposure to different kinds of people is my guess. Better education, exposure to and better connection with more types of people. Exposure to different ways of life. And get this, even some of the right-leaning parties in Europe are more left than your liberal parties. Because the social size of small town is that everyone in power has the same belief system, and the influx of other views is either conform to that system or be disenfranchised. When you get into larger scale societies, it turns into a bunch of those smaller social units with differing views but roughly similar social power. Suddenly they can't just make everyone agree with them and do whatever they say. This means those groups who are willing to negotiate and compromise begin to over time gain more power than a more strict, less flexible group, since they can work towards combined goals with others better. Wow, it's almost like being exposed to diverse opinions, and better education makes you more open-minded and empathetic, and living in a small hick town with only white people and one high school turns you into a bigoted, single-minded yokel. Weird. Living cheek to jowl with other people forces you to be a bit more tolerant of differences. It's harder to maintain indoctrination when you're constantly exposed to all sorts of views and cultures. That forces a broadening of views. Mark Twain had it right in his quote about travel. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime. Living in a big city is a form of travel in that things come to you. Why do you think social conservatives and the MAGA cult have retreated to places that ban people for even the slightest hint of dissent, and why rural areas where people often never leave their hometowns are so narrow-minded? Ironically, the people who complain the rest of the interconnected world is liberal are those who often have very few life experiences themselves. Greater exposure to different cultures. The cities tend to be full of diverse peoples and cultures. The more you learn about other cultures, the more you realize the lies about others that the right wing has been telling you. Smaller towns tend to be more homogenized. With few exceptions, everyone is just like you. You can't learn anything new if everyone is just like you. The right wing has been pushing fear of others for years now. Fear of Muslims, fear of black people, brown people, queer people, you name it. When you live among these people in a bigger city, you realize they are nothing to be afraid of. Cities are more cosmopolitan. A lot of it has to do with education. Cities tend to have more skilled and specialized industries. needing a higher degree of training or education. Add in the need for opportunities for whatever career path you're going for as a college graduate. And moving to a city of some size is often far more appealing than just returning home. It was that way for me. My hometown was a lovely place to be a kid, but the job opportunities there are slim. Unless you want to work in some kind of manufacturing facility, nursing home or retail, restaurant business, there's not a ton going on. Higher education pushes you to critically think and be able to puzzle things out for yourself. It's why I don't really go for 99% of the conservative, Republican ideology. Most of their ideas work well in a perfect world. Small government with no restrictions on corporations? That'd work great if we could trust companies to be responsible. History has shown we can't. Lots of guns for everyone? That'd be great if we didn't have poverty and people were willing to accept that mental health screening was an important part of gun ownership.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.